Welcome to the Spa Girls podcast, the self-publishing podcast for authors. You're in the right place for the best writing, marketing, and publishing advice, plus interviews with industry experts and best-selling authors. I'm Cheryl Phipps.
I'm Shah Barrett.
I'm Wendy Vella.
And I'm Trudy J. And today we have Sarah Elisabeth Sawyer with us. Hello,
Hey,
Sarah.
Sarah.
Hey, Sarah.
Hey, everyone. So excited to be here.
Awesome. Now, Sarah is going to talk to us today about dictation, and we're all going to be listening with super glued ears. I don't know if that's a thing. That sounds like it's worse rather than better.
Great.
But we're going to be listening really hard to everything you say today, Sarah, because we're all super keen to try this out. But first, I'm going to read out your bio so everyone knows who you are, and we'll go from there. So Sarah Elisabeth Sawyer is an award-winning historical fiction author and writing instructor. She's published 19 books and is also the host of the Confident Fiction Author podcast. She's been featured on the Creative Penn podcast, Jane Friedman's blog, Writer's Digest magazine, and at InkersCon 2025. She's also taught over 800 fiction authors how to dictate their novels through her Dictation Bootcamp for authors and Fictation digital courses. There you go. Welcome.
Whoa, welcome.
That was a mouthful. Thank you so much, Trudy. And I'll just introduce myself to everyone in Choctaw right quick. So halito, sahochafoyet, Sarah Elisabeth Sawyer, Choctaw Sia Hoke. Hi, my name is Sarah Elisabeth Sawyer, and I am Choctaw. I'm a tribal member of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and we'll talk a little bit more about that toward the end. But just wanted to introduce myself for those of you in Choctaw.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'm super excited to hear more about your Choctaw Indian, is that right to say the way you say it? Heritage and all the stuff that you do around that. But first, we are going to talk about dictation. So actually, before that, we're going to ask you about how you got into indie publishing and writing. Like, where did that come from? Tell us your origin story.
Oh, I love that. Can I go back to when I was 5 years old? That's when I wrote my first story. on just the little sticky notes, 5 little sticky notes. My mom had given me a little pad to write on because I had a story about kindness to share. And I knew I was so shy, I would not be able to tell it, which ironically I do a lot of storytelling now, but I wouldn't be able to tell it. So I knew I had to write it down if I wanted to be able to share that story. So that's where I got started with writing, and then just continued on through my teens. And then when I was 23, so we're a few years back now, when I was 23, I just kind of crashed and burned. I was doing a lot of different things, getting my life started and all. And I just kind of wiped everything off and just turned it over to God. And I walked into Barnes and Noble several months later, picked up a copy of Writer's Digest, and it was like, God was just like, this is what you're to do. You're to be a writer. And that's when I latched on to learning the craft of fiction writing and then getting into publishing. And it was actually my mother who really pushed me toward indie publishing. So I'm really grateful that she did. No regrets whatsoever on that. I love being able to have that creative control over my books. So yeah, 19 books and counting out now.
Well, that's awesome. That's fantastic. Love that story.
Yeah, very cool.
Very common to a lot of people, sort of getting a bit lost and then finding writing and what they'd always kind of maybe wanted to do since they were 5 and wrote on post-it notes.
Hey, my mom saved that too.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
cute. Not everyone would do that. I would probably do that because I'm a hoarder, but not everyone.
She's a hoarder.
Yeah.
She's our hoarder.
She's she says that
I
kindly.
see all the books. I see
Yeah.
all the books. There's
Yeah,
nothing
I
wrong with
know.
that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's empty space because I was tidying. But anyway, I'll stop talking about that. And so that's how you got into fiction. How did you get into dictation? What was the impetus behind that?
That was in 2013. Before that, I had listened to lots of podcasts. I was always listening to author podcasts and watching the YouTube videos and all. And every once in a while, there would be one pop up, this author who was dictating their stories. And they were writing while they were out taking walks or while loading groceries in the car. And they were getting 10,000 words a day, just in between all of the other things they were doing in life or while getting exercise. And I was like, I want to do that. And they were talking about how they're doubling their writing speed and all of these things. And I was like, that's what I want to do, especially as an indie author. Like the more books out, right? The more money you make, all the things. And I wanted to really make fiction writing, my career. I wanted to center that. But I kept trying and failing with dictation. So I got hung up on the technical. I would go into Office Depot or Office Store here, and it was back when you could buy the software, and put it on a CD-ROM, put it in your
Yep.
computer.
Yeah.
And so
And
that's
that,
where I would look at that, and I would look at Dragon Dictation, and I was like, "Whoo, that's good $700, $1,000 investment if I throw a mic in there and all of these things, or get a digital recorder." And I was like, "That's just a pretty hefty investment for me, just getting started with my fiction writing." And so I just thought, and what if I can't actually do it? What if I invest all of this and I can't actually get my words of fiction to flow out of my mouth as natural as typing? So I kept going back and forth on it. Finally, in 2013, I got my first iPhone. So I got my first smartphone in 2013. And one of the first things I did was I downloaded the Dragon Anywhere software. So you can, dictate on your phone. And I just did the trial version. I was, real cheapskate. I didn't even I just did the trial version, started it up, did a few words of fiction. I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, I've got a scene going here, posted about it on social media. I was like, this could be epic. And it was an epic failure. I could not actually dictate my words. Like, I was still getting hung up on the tech, and I was just like, my brain would just freeze. Like, I'd start it and then my brain would just freeze. And I was like, okay, I found out my brain is just not wired that way. Some authors are wired to be able to speak their words, and some authors are not. And I am one of the authors I'm just not wired to speak my words. So I put it quietly to the side, let that Facebook post die, and just was like, okay, it's gone. And then I really couldn't give up on it, though. I would hear more authors on a podcast. Oh yeah, I'm dictating and I'm being healthier, and I've, got carpal tunnel, and it's just so much better for my eye health, and I'm away from my desk and all. So I kept coming back to it. I just could not fully let it go. That went on for 7 years, honestly, from even before that, but from 2013 to 2020, I finally sat myself down in early 2020, and I was like, I am going to train myself to dictate. Whatever I've got to do. I've just got to start practicing this. I've got to start doing it. So I did. I even started sharing a bit about it here and there. So I did start training myself. And then one day I had to get out the door, and I had go to an appointment in about 20 minutes. I had a sink full of dirty dishes, and I don't like to leave dirty dishes in the sink when I head out. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do these dishes right quick and then go out the door. As soon as I crossed the threshold into the kitchen, it was like this entire backstory scene just downloaded in my brain. And I know every author I'm thinking just about has had this experience where you have a perfect scene. You've got the opening, you've got the ending, you've got the middle, and then you lie to yourself and you're like, I'll remember that later. When I get back to my computer, I will remember the whole thing, and I'll get it written down. And I knew that wouldn't happen. Like, when I got back from my appointment, like, it would just be completely gone. So I thought I had two choices. I was like, okay, well, I could either just do the dishes and hope for the best when I get back, or I could forget that, go to my computer and jot down some notes. Because at that point, I was a pretty experienced author. I had several books out, and I knew that scene, I could just had that sense where it would take me about an hour to get it written. And I was like, I definitely don't have that, but I could get a few notes. And then I realized I had a third option. I was like, I have been practicing this dictation thing. What if I just do it? What if I got to lose? What if I just give it a shot? And so I did. I grabbed my phone and I plugged in my earbuds with the wires with the little mic hanging down. And I don't really recommend that for dictation because it does, like rub on your clothes and can interfere with the sound. But the thing is, I started with what I had. And that's what I tell authors, like, just start with what you have. Like, start messy, just the imperfection, like, just get going with it. So I did. I plugged it in, started my record app, dropped my phone in my pocket, and started doing the dishes while I was speaking that scene. And about 15, 20 minutes later or so, I finished, headed out the door for my appointment, came back, had my app transcribe those words. And I had come out with almost 1,500 words of fiction in that short time span. Not only the speed, but the fact that it would have been completely gone if I hadn't dictated it. So I was blown away, and I thought, whatever I have to do to make this my go-to in my regular fiction writing process, that's what I need to do. And that's when the power of dictation just really clicked for me. The speed, the multitasking, and then the health benefits. And I was like, this is what I need to do to build a sustainable fiction writing career. So I went on to dictate that entire novel, and I've dictated a total of 14 books, 11 published, but a total of 14 books now.
Wow.
What time frame have you done those books?
That was them writing the 2020, early 2020 to early 2023, and then I wrote one more in 2024. So I've been a little slack because I have been teaching authors how to dictate. So I've been a little slack on my own
That's
books,
awesome.
but plus I did take a fiction writing sabbatical. That's a different topic, but I did take just a sabbatical, and I needed that time off and that recovery. But yeah, that was about that time period there.
Yeah,
Wow,
that's really
awesome.
fast. So okay, let's take a step back quickly. So that's awesome. Oh my God, I'm like super excited. Let's talk about what exactly we mean by dictation. Like if there's someone out there who's been living under a rock and doesn't know what it is, just let's get back to basics and explain that, and then we'll carry on with how you exactly dictate these days and what you recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are one of the authors that you're like, I'm already lost in this conversation, like I don't even know dictation, just know you're not alone. So many authors, when they hear me speak, do a presentation or one of my courses, they're like, this is the first time I've really heard about the concept of dictation, and certainly the first time to do my fiction writing. Like I didn't even know this was a thing. So that is really exciting for me to just be that first one to introduce people to dictation and what it is. And you mentioned my course, Fictation. So I coined that term, Fictation. It's the act of dictating your fiction. And all it is you are speaking your words instead of typing them. This goes back to, I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, this is just since we have smartphones and Dragon and, computers and all. This goes back to as far as long as pharaohs have had and kings have had scribes, like they spoke their words, somebody else took them down, all the way through the late 1900s. I mean, the late 1800s. I know John Milton, he dictated his epic poem, Paradise Lost. Barbara Cartland, I believe is her name. Barbara Cartland wrote like over 700 romance novels by dictation. So she had a private secretary. So she would just walk around, speak her words, and her secretary was taking them down. We think about, lawyers and bankers and doctors and stuff just speaking their words and somebody else is taking it down in shorthand. Like that was a whole career to take down words in shorthand, and then you would go and type it up. So dictation is just speaking your words out loud and then they are being transcribed. The big benefit that we have today is we have softwares just built into our phones and on our computers that we can just speak to it, and it will take our words down and put them on the page for us. And it is incredibly powerful, not only for faster, because you can get more words out of your mouth. After you trained yourself, you can get more words of fiction out of your mouth than out of your fingertips. And then two, your health. I have so many authors who are coming to me with to do dictation because they're like, I can't continue to be a writer if I don't dictate because I have carpal tunnel, I have arthritis, I have eye issues. There are so many things. So that's what's bringing authors to, that's what dictation is. And that's what's bringing authors to it. So I'm just really excited to be able to teach authors how to do this.
Yeah,
That's so
awesome.
cool.
So what's your process these days? Like, are you still using your Dragon Anywhere or are you using a different program? How does that work for you?
I never used Dragon beyond that 2013 trial version. I never went back to Dragon. And I've heard a lot of authors, some authors still use it. So if you're out there, you're using Dragon and it's working for you, that's fantastic. It was actually bought out by Microsoft. So for those of us kind of in the Apple ecosystem, we can't even use Dragon. But the cost of it, I was just like, I can't do that. So I just used a free app, or I think I paid a $5 upgrade for a free app on my phone or an app on my phone, and it would record my words and transcribe it within the app. I did 9 books that way. Currently, my method that I love it. I have the Scrivener. I do everything on Scrivener. I have the Scrivener for iOS app, and it's not available for Android, unfortunately. But I loaded that on there, got it synced between my Scrivener files on my computer, so it's the same files on my phone. I just go into my current work in progress, tap up the scene, tap up the keyboard, and tap my dictation function on that's already on my phone on my keyboard. Tap that, and it does this little beep, and I start speaking, and the words appear right in my Scrivener file. When I finish, I just sync it and then I go to my computer to do cleanup. So it's a much more streamlined process than doing the record and transcribe, but there's a lot of benefits to the record and transcribe as well. But that's my current method. It's incredible the tools that we have now to use.
Yeah, that's amazing. So are you still dictating like when you do the dishes? Do you go for walks? How do you dictate?
Yeah, so I need to do it more when I'm doing the dishes. I do the dishes every day. I can get so many words in. But no, I typically actually like to just get in my big comfy chair in the mornings where I do my morning routine. And I wish I should write more when I'm walking, and they say that walking actually, energizes your creative juices and all. Like it can really help with the blocks and everything with creativity. What I found is I'm just I'm a bit different. I think better with my imagination, or I think better when I'm sitting still. So I will typically sit in my big comfy chair. I'm still away from my desk. I'm not sitting in my office chair. And honestly, my favorite way to dictate is just lying in bed. So I'll just like get in the most comfortable position, no pressure on my neck, my shoulders, my back, and just get completely comfortable. And I don't drift to sleep, but I just kind of get in that dream like state almost. And my imagination really fires up. And that's where I will get the most words in if I just do that. But typically, I'm just in my big comfy chair. That's how I like to dictate. But I have so many authors who do it while they're out for walks or while they're I've got lots of moms. And so they're giving their kids chores. And in between, while their kids are doing the chores, they're getting more words in than if they lock themselves away in their office. So it's been huge for that time management kind of thing and being able to get your words in all throughout the day.
Mm. I've
Are you
never,
do you still
Sorry.
have to manage the punctuation and things like that, when you're cleaning it up the file?
Yeah, so punctuation is a big one. A lot of authors do just like to do auto punctuate. So they do just leave their auto punctuation on in their on their app that they're using and they're built in. I trained myself to speak my punctuation, and I'm a big advocate for that today, even today, because it gives you that control over your fiction, especially because we fiction authors, we use punctuation a bit differently, even from nonfiction at all. Like we really, use it as a part of our style and as a part of our writing voice. So not your physical voice, but your actual writing voice. And that's why I encourage authors to train themselves to speak their punctuation. Once you've done that, it really is as natural as typing. So as natural as hitting the return or hitting shift and the question mark, like speaking my punctuation is very natural. You can do auto punctuate. What a lot of my authors are doing now, really just starting this year, is they are dropping their transcribed words into an AI program with some prompts and with some parameters, and it's doing the cleanup for them, including adding punctuation. So that's an option for those authors who are comfortable with that. But that's what I do. I still speak my punctuation.
so even in this, so that you use Scrivener and Scrivener, so you'll go open quote, say the words, full stop, close quote, and Scrivener knows how to switch all of that into the, okay.
Yes. And so it's not actually Scrivener doesn't have a built-in dictation option. What it is just using your onboard default dictation or speech to text that's on your phone. So it's an accessibility feature. So just like we can dictate text messages, emails, it's that same thing. But wherever you can type words, you have the option of hitting your dictation and speaking them instead of typing them. So I will say different programs pick it up a bit differently. There are some nuances like with Scrivener, or say you have Microsoft Word on your phone and you're using that, it may behave a bit differently. It's going to behave differently a bit between iPhone and Android and PC and Mac. Some of those punctuations are a bit different. For some it's open quote and some it's like begin quote or it's new line or new paragraph. And so there'll be little nuances, and I just encourage authors to get to know their device and go do some Googling and find a cheat sheet for some commands for your specific device. But yes, it does pick up if you say like open quote, get out of here, exclamation point, close quote. And so that's how whenever I dictate, I'll put all of that in there.
Okay, that's cool. And things like new paragraph and all those kinds of things, that picks that up. Yeah.
So if you were just starting out, how would you get started? Because I mean, you say, well, I feel like I've tried it so many times and failed, which is on me, because I stopped immediately. But like, I've written a lot of books. These guys have written a lot of books, and we're at the stage where we're like, oh, old dog, new tricks. No, but really, we're the ones who need it because we're a little bit not old, but
Mature.
mature, and our hands are and all of that. It would be nice to start and be able to do it. But what would you recommend for us starting out?
I would recommend, especially, as experienced fiction authors, and I've had authors in that, have written 150 plus books, and making that transition to be able to speak them versus typing, because like I said, sustainability, being able to continue writing your fiction. So one is don't fall for the myths that, oh, my brain just doesn't work that way. Other people are talented with dictating their fiction, but I'm not wired that way. It's kind of like some people can do math, some people can't, some people can do art, some people can't. It is a learned skill. And whenever I was first learning to type, when I was 14, I had a Canon electric typewriter, with a little screen, and it would show you the words of that sentence, and you better do any corrections before you got to the end, because then it would print on the page, and then here comes the whiteout. So I learned to type on that Canon typewriter. I used one of my existing stories that I had handwritten, and I started typing that, and that's how I learned to type. And I gradually got better and learned it. I think with dictation, what a lot of authors do is just put that pressure on, okay, I'm not going to type, I'm just going to dictate. And what I encourage more authors to do, and what I would encourage y'all to do, is to just start with a little bit of dictation. So just do some practice, and even do it on a throwaway story. So like not one you're wanting to publish, maybe it's outside your genre, but you think it'd be fun, or, some flash fiction, or maybe some backstory of what you're doing. And that way you don't have the pressure of you're having to create something that your readers are going to actually read. And you're like, I don't know if this is going to be in my style. You have a lot of expectations from your readers because you are so established, and you're like, so you're putting that pressure on your brain, and your brain's going, whoa, 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 this is, and you're wanting me to learn a new skill. So where I start authors, and like in my Dictation Bootcamp, is we actually start with reading off other people's work. And then we just start with brain dump. So we kind of go through a series of steps before you ever actually start dictating your fiction. Because I think if you start with just dictating your fiction, and your brain just like freaks out and goes, no, 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 we can't speak this. We need to type through my fingertips, not through my, coming out my mouth with my imagination. So I think it's really important to just get comfortable with speaking your words out loud. So reading off other people's work, reading off your own work into a dictation tool. So if you're using, like, say, directly into Scrivener, just open up a blank file completely separate from your current work in progress, so you don't have that pressure, and then just start practicing with reading off other people's work, and then practicing with some brain dumps. I started with morning pages. Like, that's how I really trained myself to speak, and especially speak my punctuation, is I would dictate my morning pages. So just starting with some really simple exercises like that to get yourself in gear and get yourself trained before you put that pressure of, I've got to dictate my next best-selling book in my series, and I've got, thousands of readers that are expecting it in my style. And it's too much pressure on your brain, I think, to just go right into that expectation with dictation.
That's really good advice, actually.
Yeah,
I
really
can see that would be a lot easier to start out. It's funny you say that, because that's exactly what I would have done. I would have, like, right, I'm going to start a new story. It's going to be the next book, and I'm going to learn to, and it actually makes a lot of sense to start on something else. So when you say, so one of the benefits you've mentioned of dictation is that you write faster. So how fast are you actually write, or have you written, say, per hour or per day with dictation versus what you used to do?
Yeah, so I would always time myself with typing, or not always, but I, was testing my typing speed, because I wanted to know, like, how can I get more words down? How can I be more efficient? And also I would time some of my writing sessions. And with typing, I averaged about 1,500 words of fiction per hour, which was decent. I was like, okay, this is okay, but it's not where I want to be. Like, I want to be one of these authors that's cranking out all of these words. And so I time myself with that. With dictation, and my top speed with typing would be about 2,000 words. So I had a Neo Alpha Smart, and I could just really pound away on that, and I wasn't worried about damaging my computer keys. So I would really go at it, and I could get up to 2,000 words an hour, but not very often. Like, that was my peak. With dictating and speaking much slower than I am right now, like, I really process my thoughts and my words, and I do lots of pauses. So when I'm dictating my fiction, I go much slower, and I hit an average of 3,000 words per hour. So I did double my writing speed, and I've hit up to 4,000 words per hour with dictating. And again, not speaking as fast as what I am right now. I'm taking my time with the story. I'm pausing, but it's still just, even at that, it's so much faster. So I will get that done. That's double. And then I've hit, like I said, up to 4,000 and up to 11,000 words in a day. You do have to put your cleanup time in there, which for me, it was awful. When I started out, it was about 50-50. So if I spent 30 minutes and I would get that 1,500 words or so, it would take me 30 minutes to clean it up. With my practice, and so that almost stopped me from dictation. I was like, well, that's not faster. Like, I'm still getting 1,500 words in an hour. But what I found is, one, my dictation improved. Two, the transcriptions got better. And two, I still wasn't at my desk. That's still 30 minutes that I wasn't sitting hunched over my keyboard at my desk, even with the dictation. And then three, I realized I was actually doing a lot of editing. So I wasn't necessarily just doing the cleanup. when I say cleanup, your goal is just that it looks as good as if you had typed that draft versus dictated it. So you're just doing a speed read, you're just cleaning it up and getting it to that point. So with that, I'm about 90-10. So if I spend 50, 55 minutes getting that 3,000 words in or close to that 3,000 words, I'm only spending 5 or 10 minutes doing cleanup. So I'm still, even with cleanup, I'm pretty close to that 3,000 words per hour. Because even when you think about typing that 1,500 words, like there's still going to be typos in there. There's still going to be like light editing that needs to be done for it to look like a decent first draft, which I'm a big advocate of messy first drafts. Nothing wrong with that. But that's where I land with my writing speed. So really, really grateful for that worked out with dictation.
Yeah, that's awesome. And but it does take time, right? You've got to accept that it's you're going to start out, it's a learned skill. We can be amazing at it just like you are, but we just have to allow ourselves that time and to accept that first draft is going to be messy. And
I think they call it patience, Trudy, which you and I don't have, buddy.
No, I know. It's a bit of an awkward trait that
I download that one from the App Store.
Yeah.
The Patience app. I have a hack that I call, or a habit that I call 5 minutes of fiction. And that's a really good place to start with your dictation. If you just spend 5 minutes a day doing a bit of dictation to get those muscles trained, work through your tech challenges, all of that. So I have a club actually right now over on Substack, the 5 Minute Fictation Club. So anyone's welcome to check that out. So really, really big advocate of taking baby steps and just really doing it step by step and training yourself to dictate.
That's another thing we don't do, baby steps.
Give me the leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
That's it.
So are there any other kind of tips and tricks? Like I've already picked up a few things, but you talked about before, like how you speak slower and you're enunciating your words. Are there other things that you need to do as you're reading out or are thinking up your scene?
So a couple of things. Some authors ask, like, do you have to outline? To some authors, I'm like, I'm a pantster. I just write by the seat of my pants. I don't do an outline. Do I have to outline in order to do dictation? The short answer is no. I have authors who they are 100% seat of the pants writers and they don't outline. They may do like a sentence or something before they take off with their dictation of that scene, just kind of get their minds there, but they're not like an outliner or a plotter. I land in between. I'm a plantster. So I'm in between a plotter and a pantster. And what I have found, though, is it is really helpful to have an outline. So that is something that even if you are a seat of the pants writer, if you're moving into dictation, it is helpful to have an outline. It is not mandatory. If I don't want to mess with anybody's process, their writing process and what they do. But if you are like more of a seat of the pants writer, you can totally dictate. But I will say it can help you with, having those bit of cleaner drafts. You're not kind of rambling and mumbling along as you go with your dictating. Although what I just encourage one of my authors to do is if you do feel like you need to kind of mumble and ramble a bit, just turn your dictation function off and just let those thoughts come out verbally. Grab a pen, notepad, and make notes if you need to, and just let those thoughts come out and then start your dictation function. So that would be the other thing that I would advise authors. You're getting started with dictation. Don't feel that pressure to, once you activate your dictation function, you have to speak nonstop and you have to go really fast, because that's the whole point of dictation is you've got to get these words down on the page. You don't need to do that. You can totally just go slow and pause. Like your dictation function will do this little beep if you let it sit too long. And so authors feel that pressure of, I've got to keep talking to keep that activated or it's going to deactivate on me. Let it deactivate. Or better yet, go ahead and deactivate it yourself and then let you get your thoughts together and then reactivate it and start speaking again. So you definitely don't have to just do this nonstop stream when you're dictating your fiction. It doesn't have to be as fast even as you're typing, because you are just learning this new skill and it will get faster as you go. But don't put that pressure on yourself of, I've got to create exactly like I've always created. And once I activate that dictation function, I cannot stop until my hour is up. So totally give yourself permission to take breaks and just get your thoughts together, review your outline, whatever it is you need to do before you pick up and start the next sentence.
Yeah,
it's funny how we've been talking our entire lives, but the minute we actually get on, and dictate, like I went for a walk the other day and I was like, right, I'm going to dictate and this is going to be awesome. I just felt myself tense. My shoulders came up. It was like I was on trial, like I was like, It's funny, isn't it, the way it happens?
Yeah.
It is. We
It's,
put that pressure on ourselves. That's why we got to ease into it.
yeah. I
I
love
have a
it.
question. Do you see the text itself in your mind's eye when you're speaking?
That is a really great question. I will say I've thought about this between typing and dictating. Like, how is it different? A lot of my writing process is the same now that I've developed those neural pathways to be able to dictate my fiction. My mindset and my imagination, like the creative flow that I get into, is very, very similar to typing. I don't know that there's really a difference. I don't Sometimes I will visualize the actual words, but mostly I'm visualizing the scene. And that's how I do whenever I'm typing a story. I will just get into that flow and I will just begin to visualize the scene. And what is helpful for some authors, though, is to visualize that sentence that they need to write next. And don't even start your dictation function until you have it. Like, form that first sentence, then start it and speak that sentence. So you can take it one sentence at a time. But typically, sometimes I will see the words in my head and in my imagination, but most of the time I'm seeing the scene. And really fun bonus with dictation is you can get into a bit of role playing. So if you have a character that has an accent, or if you're like, doing a sword fight and you want to like jab and stuff, like you're free to do that when you're dictating versus typing. So it can be fun with that too. But yeah, I'm typically visualizing the scene and really getting deep into my character skins.
I
Yeah.
always find it interesting how brains work of, different people's brains work. Yeah. I personally, I see the text when I'm not dictating, but when I'm writing, I see the text.
Yeah.
That's funny, isn't it? So,
Mm.
so what are some of so you've actually mentioned a few of them as we've been going through, but let's just be really specific here. What are the benefits of dictation, like beyond writing faster? Like what else is there that the reasons that we should actually consider this?
Yeah, that's the thing. I have a lot of authors come to me. They're like, writing faster is actually not important to me. I like to I just like the craft of it. I'm not even doing it for money or publication. Like, I just enjoy writing, and I'm not out to, be a speed demon, getting all of these words down. I just enjoy it. So yeah, convince me. Why would I want to dictate? And the number one is we've touched on this, and that's health. So that's actually been outpacing writers coming to me for dictation training, is because of their health versus doing their getting their words down faster. Health, we've got, just so much, like, talk about the tension in the shoulders. Like, I actually, back whenever I was typing, I would feel so physically exhausted and drained. Like, I would get my hour or so of writing in. If I did any more than that, I would just be like, okay, I did my thing for the day. Like, anything I do after this is bonus, because I was just tired. Like, I was physically and emotionally and mentally tired with dictating. So even if you don't have like specific health things you're wanting to prevent or that you're dealing with, just the fatigue. And with dictating, it energizes me. So it actually gives me more energy instead of making me feel more fatigued, not only in my body, but mentally and emotionally. I just come away with it like, hey, what else do we have to do today? Like, that was the best thing. That was the best part. But now I still have energy left over to do other things in the day. So health,
Yeah,
biggie,
interesting.
whether you have health issues or just fatigue, you can dictation, so good for that. Time management, I mentioned, like moms who are doing it while they're, doing their kids' things, or while they're sitting in the carpool line, they're able to get words in. It lets you squeeze in words in all of the little places in life that it's just impossible. Like, I could not do dishes and type at the same time. Like, it's just, I mean, I guess I could. My computer would be ruined, but it's like there are some times that it's just physically impossible to type words, but you can speak them. And when you have those ideas of inspiration, so time management, big one, but then just having those ideas and being able to capture them anywhere, anytime. So you're at a writing conference and you have this scene and you be able to get off in a, bathroom stall or something and like just speak that. Whereas, you wouldn't be able to sit down and type it. One, it would just take you too long. But if you've got a 5-minute break in between classes, you can, catch that scene. And then for me, like, I was headed out the door, like that scene would have been lost. And so many authors, you wake up in the middle of the night, you're not gonna like, well, some, you may pull up your keyboard and all and your computer, but for most of us, we have our phones right by our bed. So we pretty much have our phones with us everywhere, for better or worse. Like, we pretty much always have our phones with us. And so we're able to capture those story ideas, even if it's just notes, even if all you can do is get down some notes, get down some dialogue, or if you can actually get down a scene, you have that option. So there are more benefits to dictation, but those are like some of the top ones, I think, especially for indie authors and just for creatives and for longevity and just building that sustainable author career.
Yeah, that's awesome. So
Do you have any advice for someone that is actually doesn't use a Mac?
Oh, absolutely. So I know I use Mac and I have iPhone, so I'm in the Apple world, but for PC users, you can it's the same thing. So the built-in speech to text is typically what it's called, or I think it's Windows speech recognition on PC. And I have heard really great things for authors using that with Microsoft Word and other programs too, Atticus and different ones, and Scrivener. So you can use all of these. It doesn't matter what your writing processor is that you use, or whether you're using a Mac or a PC, you have a built-in speech to text or dictate option on the device you already own. So anywhere that blinking cursor is that you can type, you should be able to activate your dictation function and speak. So on PC, it's Windows H is typically the shortcut. And so when you're on Microsoft Word, you've got your blinking cursor, you hit your Windows and your H, and it should activate your dictation function. That may be different depending on your device and what, upgrades you have. And, we could get into, more, it really just depends on individuals' devices, but it is an accessibility feature. So pretty much all modern devices have the ability to do the speech to text. So if you are on Android, same thing. If you want to put the Microsoft Word app on your Android phone, you can then call up your keyboard and tap that mic on there and start speaking your words, and they will appear on the page. The only one different as far as like the built-in that I've come across with that is Google Docs. Google Docs actually has its own built-in speech to or dictate option on it, which is really interesting. So whether you're accessing it from your computer, PC or Mac, or whether you're accessing it from your phone, iPhone or Android, Google Docs has its own like native built-in dictate option. So that's interesting. And it behaves a bit differently from the other ones, but the same basic idea is there. And lots of authors love using just dictating directly into Google Docs.
yeah, that's cool.
That's
Thank you. You mentioned somewhere about that actually dictation can help either avoiding or recovering from burnout. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yes. And I know y'all have probably heard this so much of authors just facing burnout right now and really the last couple of years. And like I said, I had to take some time off. It was unrelated to actually like physically writing because I was doing dictation. But that was what really helped me get back into fiction writing, especially my 5 minutes of fiction habit that I started. But I think for some authors, burnout is, there's so many pressures. Y'all talk about this so much on the podcast. There's so many pressures with being an indie author from, you have to do the actual writing, but then there's the editing and there's the cover design and there's the marketing and there's all these things, all of these expectations on authors. And whether you're successful with selling them or not, we're seeing authors who have had lots of monetary success and authors who have had no monetary success and all hitting that burnout because there's just so much to do. And I think dictation, one of the things it does is it's helping. I've seen it help some authors fall back in love with writing again. Like it just getting back to your storytelling roots, because for most of us, we didn't start out typing. We didn't start out handwriting. We started out just orally telling our stories. And we told the story of when we fell down and we scraped our knee. Like we just started out telling stories. And I think that's when a lot of us fell in love with the idea of sharing these fictional worlds and talking about them with other people and telling the stories, even if we were just telling them to ourselves, as bedtime stories, like we would, just actually telling stories. And I think dictation lets authors revisit that and reignite them with the idea of creating fictional worlds, and it gets you away from the keyboard. You can go out and walk. So if that's a part of your recovery from burnout, you just need to get moving. Like your body, you have just literally, I know some authors, like they just sit for 12, 14 hours a day at their computers, at their desk, and writing's just a small part of it. But if you could take even that small part away and get out in nature and just allow that rejuvenation and allow your imagination to just be reignited and then let those words come out. So that's some of the things I've seen with authors with burnout, and then just the physical burnout of being at the keyboard versus, like I said, I'm just not nearly as exhausted, or I'm not exhausted at all after dictating. Like it energizes me versus whenever I would type, it would actually drain my energy, which just adds to that burnout. I mean, I think you can only do that so long. And I have a quote that I use in one of my trainings too. It's like when writing hurts your body, like you're on borrowed time. And I think that burnout is a part of that, hurting your body from being at a desk can lead to that burnout or definitely contribute to it. So I think dictation, it just really kind of pulls some authors out of that and just gives you a different way of writing so that you can get words on the page and just fall in love with creating stories again.
Yeah, that's
Makes
awesome.
sense.
Yeah.
What
Really good.
we sort of talked about this quickly before, but I'd like to be really specific about this. What do you say to people who say, my brain just doesn't work that way? I just can't do dictation because I can't think like that. How does that?
Mhm. It goes back to it's a learned skill. So I think we put too much value on like talent. It's like even fiction writing. Some authors are like, or some people that want to do fiction, they're like, I just don't know if I have the talent to write fiction. And we know talent's just a tiny part of it. It's like 10%. And then the rest is hard work, and it's learning the craft, it's learning how to put together stories, it's educating yourself, it's doing training, and then it's just doing it and just repeating it over. It's doing your reps and getting those stories done and getting that fiction writing. And then you turn around, you're like, I'm an author. I'm a fiction author. Like I did it. I made it. And dictation is it's so much the same thing. It is a learned skill. It is something that authors plug away and practice at it and all. And then one day they turn around and just the scene just starts coming out. And they're like, wow, it happened. But very specifically, not to get too much into brain science, because I am not not studied. I've studied a little bit on the brain science, but you are creating new neural pathways. So when you learn a new skill, you're creating new neural pathways. And that's like digging a trench in our brain. And so that way, when something is, you think about water going in a trench, like it just flows and it just goes, not, spreading out all over the place and being chaotic and stuff. It just drops into that trench and it flows. With dictation, and this is why I teach authors, like you need to train yourself to do dictation, you are creating new neural pathways or trenches in your brain so that you can drop those words of fiction in there and they flow out of your mouth as naturally as they did when you were typing. Because authors, when we were handwriting and then switching to typing, that's why I started with a story that already existed, because I knew I needed to train myself to type. I needed to create those neural pathways, that muscle memory to be able to type my stories. So this is just a new medium of writing. It's a new way of getting your words on the page. And it is a matter of getting your mind and your mouth connected with those new neural pathways. So that's, if you think, I'm just not wired that way, that's what we're thinking. We're thinking our brain is wired, like those neural pathways are either there or they're not. And for some authors, it is so much more natural. I had an author who came in first day in the boot camp and she's like, hey, y'all, I just dictated 2,200 words. And other people are like, I can't even read off an excerpt. Like, I can't even, like, how did you do that? So I will say that it is easier for some authors, just like I think fiction writing or storytelling, like we can have more inclinations toward certain talents, art, same way, singing. But in the end, all of those are learned skills. So that's why I believe every author can learn the skill. It may take longer and more effort for some authors, and some just take off. But I believe that all of our brains, it's not a matter of brain wiring, because we can rewire our brain and dig those neural trenches so that the words can flow out with dictation. So that's why I'm a big advocate of it. It's not that your brain doesn't work that way. You just need the right training for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like anything, right?
Yeah.
We have to work at it, don't we?
Yeah. Damn it.
I am of the leaning of effortless. So I do try to, and that's why I do my trainings the way I do. Is like I want to make it as effortless as possible for authors with this new skill. Like everything doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be pull yourself up by the bootstraps and I'm going to grip my way through this, white knuckle my way through this. So I do try to make it as effortless as possible. That's why we start just all nice and easy and then get into the good stuff.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's brilliant.
Mhm.
Do you notice the difference between your dictated words and words that you've written on a typewriter? Is there a stylistic difference, or is it just all the same?
Great question. That's, author voice. Like, are we going to lose our author voice when we go from typing to dictating? And especially for more experienced authors like you and a lot in your audience, that's a big concern because you've already built a brand, you've already built a career, and readers expect a certain voice in the story when they come into it and a certain style. Whenever I started dictating, it was book 4 in my Choctaw Tribune series. So this was an established series, and I'd already written books prior to that too. So I had a pretty established author voice. I'd written like 60 flash fictions. I'd done lots of writing. So whenever I got into dictating, that was one of my big concerns. I'm like, not only did I have an established author voice, but I had an established voice for that series. So there was, certain expectations for that series itself and how I presented that story world and, the characters and all the things that really drew people to my writing. Like they wanted this in that series. So I had that added pressure. So I was like, okay, what if I lose my voice? What if I lose my voice in this series? And I'm like, this is going to be the telltale. So I sent it out to my beta readers. I did not tell them I had dictated it because I was like, I just want them to just read it and give me feedback just like they always would. And so what I was kind of expecting was for them to come back and say, Sarah, this was a little off. It was great. I enjoyed it, but it was a little off. Like it didn't quite sound like you. And I got none of that. Like they just gave me the same kind of feedback that I had gotten before. That like, I love this about this character, maybe check this historical detail. Like it was just all just regular beta reader kind of stuff. That said, I have had authors come in who had dictated one author in particular. She had dictated a novel, turned it into her editor, and her editor was like, "Who wrote this?" So there is that thing, and I have a whole training on preserving your author voice whenever you're making the transition from typing to dictating. I think one of the benefits, and actually I've heard a lot of authors that they didn't have an issue with making that transition, but I do have specific things. I think for me, I did have a bit of oral storytelling background. I had some things that I think helped, but ultimately I did not lose my author voice. And I'm really grateful for that. And honestly, that one author, that was the only one that I heard with that. So I worked with her. That's what prompted me to create that extra training of like, if you're concerned about that, here are some specific things you can do to make sure that you make that, you make that transition while preserving your author voice, especially if you're right in the middle of a series. So I went on to publish book 4 in my Choctaw Tribune series and got the same thing from reader reviews and all same kind of compliments that I had gotten from the other books. So I was like, okay, I think I did it. Nobody even knows that I'm dictating. Yay. Like I stuck it in there. So I was really grateful for that.
That's very cool. So I just want to ask one more thing and then we'll get on to the other topic that we're going to talk about. But so you said messy drafts aren't a failure, they're a key to momentum, which I really love, like, or messy equals a breakthrough. So do you find that like that you're able to use dictation to kind of, I don't know, unstuck yourself, that kind of thing? Yeah.
Get unstuck. Yeah. Unstick yourself. Definitely. And that goes back to I didn't talk about that when you talked about benefits of dictation. Breaking through writer's block, or what we call writer's block, is so dictation is a wonderful tool for that because it does give you a literal sense of movement if you're walking around and all and you're really getting your creative juices going. So you have a literal sense of movement and momentum. But there is just, whenever you get into dictating and you've mastered it and now you're writing your first drafts by dictation, there are a few things momentum building, like seeing those words just like just appear on the screen so effortlessly. Talk about, put in some effort to learn it. But boy, once you have it, it is so effortless to get words on the screen. Now we still have craft, we still have to battle with our characters, all the things, or normal things as writers, but you just have that added element of being able to speak and words just appear. So you don't have that physical effort of being able to do it. And I think writer's block, sometimes it's fatigue. Honestly, it's like we feel like we're blocked in a story, but sometimes we're just tired. Like, and you may need a rest. Like you legitimately may need to just get some rest for your body and your spirit and all. But for some, it's just physical tired and just mental fatigue. And you're like, I don't want to sit at the keyboard. And so that's a part of your block versus the story. And so dictation removes that, especially if you are up moving your body and then allowing the words to come because your creative juices are really, really firing. So yeah, dictation with creative block, another huge benefit. And I've seen a lot of authors who were stuck for years in the middle of their manuscript and they were finally able to break through. We could talk about writing through the muddy middle. Oh, I love using dictation through the muddy middle because that was always like running in mud and you're trying to get through it when you're typing. And dictation, not saying it completely eliminates that, but boy, it's so much better than typing through that muddy middle.
That sounds awesome. I have a few muddy middles in my books too.
I have a muddy whole book.
We all do. Yeah.
So that's actually, as you're talking, I have another question. How long does it take to get good at dictation? How long will it take me if I'm starting out now? Not that I'm
Your
impatient.
results may vary. Where's my
Yeah.
disclaimer?
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
results may vary. Like I said, some authors, they amaze me. They just surpass me. Like they just take right off with it. But then it comes into the finer tuning. Like they may take off quickly with being able to dictate it, but then they're like, oh, this is a mess, or how do I do this? And so we work through those issues. For me, a couple of months, 3 or 4 months, and it was really feeling as natural as typing. So again, your results will definitely vary. Some authors, I've had authors in my trainings for a couple of years, and they're just, kind of hit and miss. They get distracted with other things, and then they come back to it and go back and forth. And then, like I said, some authors take off with it within a week or two. So it does depend, but I think give it a couple of months of good attention to it. It's kind of like a garden, it's like how much attention you
Yeah.
give to it. And then you'll get to reap the harvest from it.
So it's probably consistency that would be key
It really is.
to picking it up quickly. So would you recommend maybe, an hour a day or something like that?
Oh, I wouldn't even recommend that
No?
because you are training your brain. When I say it, it's not as fatiguing. I think learning it may be a little more fatiguing. Whenever I was training myself doing morning pages every day, I would do my 750 words of morning pages in about 7 to 10 minutes. So
Okay.
it was, and that was about it. That's what I did really to train myself to do dictation. And then I took off with my first scene of fiction a couple months after that. But then it was still some more fine tuning, and it was still learning a few more things. But for the most part, yeah, it is consistency, and you can spend longer on it. But I always encourage authors, stop before you hit the point of frustration.
Yeah.
Because then your brain is like, this is drawing energy, we're fight or flight. Like we've got to conserve the energy in case we need to fight the barbarians coming over the hill. Like, our brain is always like, how do we conserve energy? So you want to do it before you hit the point of frustration, because then that'll just build resistance in your brain. And then your brain's like, we ain't doing that. We are not doing that. That is draining too much energy. So just do 5-10 minutes a day with practice, and then go back to typing. Go back to typing your story, or if you are just doing that just strictly as practice, that's what I recommend. Don't overdo it.
Perfect.
It's like a
Yeah, makes
muscle.
sense.
I think that's where the I can't do
I
it
don't know.
comes in.
You do it. Yeah.
When
You're
you're
like,
struggling. I just can't do
Absolutely.
it.
yeah.
I think a lot of us too, if we don't see success immediately, we're like, I've got better use of my
Yeah.
time,
Mhm.
Well,
Exactly.
that's me anyway.
Exactly.
But, yeah.
Especially if you know that you could be doing it faster typing.
That's
It's
the problem,
really
isn't
hard
it?
not to
Yes.
go, oh, I should be
Exactly.
typing
But if
this
you're only
rather
giving
than,
up 10 minutes a day, that's actually
It's,
doable, isn't it?
yeah, exactly.
Really.
It's
yeah.
also an
Yeah.
insurance policy, because I've been in a position where I literally haven't been able because of arthritis in my hands and just terrible tendonitis.
Mm.
And it's better to learn something, even have a basic kind of go at something before you actually need to, because there's
Yeah,
nothing worse than
true.
being forced into having to do
A
something.
backup.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a bit of an insurance
Right.
policy too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
definitely. So, are there any last kind of tips or pieces of advice for people wanting to try dictation? Anything that you'd like to, leave our audience with before we get on to the next topic?
Mhm. Get it together by getting it going. I think that's the biggest thing with dictation that keeps a lot of authors. They're like, I've got to have the perfect text set up. I've got to buy Dragon, which again, you do not need Dragon. I've got to get a fancy microphone. I've never used this microphone for dictating. I just use my onboard on my phone. And just like I was that day, I was like, oh, my earbuds, like this isn't going to be good audio quality. It's probably going to be terrible in the transcription. And I was like, I just need to get going with this. I need to do it. And that's what I encourage authors is you will get it together as you get it going. So get going with your dictation. Keep it simple. Just start with your onboard, your onboard on your phone or your computer, and just get started. And you will get it together with your tech and with your process and how does this fit in my writing lifestyle and all as you get going. So that's something that I'll just leave authors with is you'll get it together as you get it going.
Yeah,
Great advice.
Thank you.
that's awesome. Thank
Actually,
you.
great advice for writing in general, to be honest.
Yes.
Life. Life in
Life,
general.
yeah, right?
I have to say, I find you a very calming person, Sarah.
Yes,
I
Yeah.
find
I
you
do too.
like I'm feeling very calm about the idea of trying dictation and like
If I
not.
was a dictation app, I would really
Right.
like Sarah speaking into me. You've got a lovely, nice calm energy.
Oh,
Yeah, I
thank
think you
y'all
should go
so
into
much
into
I appreciate that.
meditations at some point, Sarah, just saying. Just to add that
Just
on.
add that on. We don't want to stress you out, but
No.
just add that
Let me put that
I'll
to my
add to your
list here.
workload.
Add that to my
Yeah.
projects.
on.
I appreciate that. That's very kind. That's very kind. I appreciate that.
Awesome. So the other type of courses that you do are around helping authors create Native American characters and how to write them respectfully and authentically and confidently be able to do that. So can you talk to us about that, where that came from, your background, why that was important to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned I'm Choctaw, a tribal member of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. Although I do live in Texas, a lot of people think I'm in Oklahoma because of that, but we go to Oklahoma often, several times a year. So especially for tribal events. I started off with, I was probably 12 years old, and I really had a desire to write a Choctaw Trail of Tears story. We had been in our Choctaw Removal story. We had been to our big Labor Day festival that we have each year and Trail of Tears commemorative walk. So I was very familiar with, the fact that I am Choctaw. That came through my mother, came through her father, and his father was an original enrollee on the Dawes, which is how we calculate our tribal membership now today. But that was the thing is my papa, my grandfather always told my mom when she was a little girl to be proud that you're Indian. And she was like, well, you don't have to go to school with me. Anyway, it's a whole other story. It's mostly for her to tell. But that just really inspired me. And learning our ancestor stories, learning their actual what it was like for them to go across the Trail of Tears, and how my fifth generation grandfather, buried his father crossing that trail. And when I say the Trail of Tears, a lot of people are familiar with the Cherokee Trail of Tears. So the Cherokees were removed from like Georgia and the Carolinas. The Choctaws were actually the first to be removed of the eastern tribes. So that became known as the Trail of Tears. So we were basically forced to trade our homelands in the Choctaws, primarily Mississippi, for lands in Indian Territory of what's today the state of Oklahoma. So our tribe rebuilt that. And actually, a side note, I just received an invitation this last week. The Choctaw Nation is putting together a history book, and my mother and I were invited to contribute to
Wow,
that
that's
so
for high
cool.
schoolers and all. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I
That's
should have
awesome.
announced that or not. Okay, that you guys have got that. Don't tell anybody. So it hasn't been
Your secret
public.
is safe with all of us.
Yeah.
I'm telling. Thank you. I appreciate that, and I trust all of your audience. So we haven't officially been accepted, but we were invited, and we've contributed to other projects. But we've just done a lot of research. My mother has done decades of research on our history and culture. So that became a real important part for me. I started off writing lots of flash fiction to really train myself as a fiction author, and I kept hearing my readers come back saying, you really have a flair for historical fiction. Like, you need to write more historical fiction. I was like, that is my favorite genre. And Native Americans can be in contemporary as well. So not to like just put them in historical, but that was my strong point. And so I just started my novels, and then all of my books just became, the main characters are all Native American in all 19 of my books, 18 that are fiction. And then the nonfiction is about a World War I hero who was Chickasaw, Cherokee, Irish, and Choctaw. So he was a very
Wow.
mixed, but he was a war hero in World War I. So I wrote his biography, and it's become really my brand. And I love that I get to, just accurately and respectfully feature American Indian characters in ways that people don't expect, beyond just teepees and headdresses, because Choctaws, we didn't live in teepees anyway. So it's a whole other thing. So really breaking stereotypes and introducing people to our history and culture in a very accessible way. So that's what really inspires me
Fantastic.
with my stories. And yeah, just sharing our faith, family, and culture. That's our motto with the Choctaw Nation.
Amazing.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
That's so cool. Thank
And
you.
and so how do you help other authors who aren't Choctaw? Do I say Choctaw Indian? Is that the right word? Every time I say it, I'm like tripping over it.
Yeah. So, oh boy, we could talk about terminology. So I'll just help you with that. Just insert this right quick. So just
Yeah.
the term Indian is kind of taboo, as far as like, it's not for us and it's not for insiders, but it is more of an insider term, and it's been
Okay.
used derogatorily so much. I can't say that word. Anyway, it's been used in negative ways so much that it just has that negative connotation. But for in insider circles, like, that's what we call each other. That's, what social elders call, they prefer the term American Indian, not Native American. Native American came from academia, so from white professors anyway. So it's like, it's a whole thing on
Oh, wow.
I did
terminology.
not know that. Oh,
And
wow.
I
This
didn't
is a
know.
whole new world,
It's
obviously.
it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. And a
Wow.
lot of younger generation, like even my generation and all, will go with Native American, because a lot of them did go through college, and I didn't.
Right.
So they do Native American studies. That's what it'll be called in colleges. And like I said, there's lots of American Indians that use that term as well, and that's what they prefer. For us personally, me and my mom, we like First Americans. There's actually the First American Museum in Oklahoma City now, which is really neat. Native American, it's anyone born in America is Native American. That's that's kind of one of our things. But American Indian still die hard, especially among elders. They prefer American Indian. We have the Smithsonian Institute, which was primarily formed by our people. They went with the National Museum of the American Indian. So it's still definitely prominent, but just Indian by itself is a little more like, that's an insider term. Choctaw Indian, very popular through the 20th century. So just saying Choctaw Indian, that was how you'll see a lot of the verbiage if you dug into the 20th century history. But typically now we just say Choctaw. So because if you're in North America, now I know, like globally, people are like Choctaw, but typically here we just refer to somebody by their tribal affiliation. Okay. So that's the best way if you can, is just refer to somebody by their tribal affiliation. For me, it's Choctaw.
So because the other term I've heard is people saying like Choctaw Nation. Is that something you would use? Yes. Or is that another? Yeah.
Yeah. So there's the Choctaw Nation. No, you're fine. I'm just well, with removal, we had some Choctaws who remained in our homelands. We had some Choctaws who went to other areas. So we have the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. We're actually the third largest federally recognized tribe in the United States, over like 200,000 members. But there's also the Mississippi Band of Choctaws. There's the Jenna Band of Choctaws in Texas. Okay. There's the Bakersfield in California. They're not officially recognized of Choctaws who went out there during the Great Depression. So there's like different segments of the Choctaws, Choctaw people. I just say I'm Choctaw, but of tribal affiliation, I'm a tribal member of the actual Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, that's our official tribal affiliation. And then like you can be an official member of the Mississippi Band of Choctaws. So they're in Mississippi. So yeah, bit of distinction there, but it's generally simple if I just say I'm Choctaw. But
yeah, for sure.
Into that.
Yeah. That's
wow.
Awesome.
That's very cool.
I'm glad you explained all that to us, actually. I feel
same.
Yeah, because it's not something
it's really interesting.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I let people know that, I'm someone you can ask those questions that you're concerned about offending someone, or you don't want to make someone upset or mad or ban you or something. Like, I'm someone you can ask those questions, because I'm not easily offended, and I really want to educate people that really want to learn.
Get it
so
right.
I'm happy to do that.
On that note, can I ask one more question? So when you're referring to the Choctaw, do you ever use the word Indigenous?
Yes. I typically don't, just as a personal preference, but Indigenous is fine. That's a very popular term here in North America. Indigenous can be Indigenous to anywhere, New Zealand, Australia, Indigenous to, and then Indigenous
people. Yeah.
Here. So yes, we do have, that is strongly used. And just saying Native, sometimes we'll just say Native, or Indigenous. Canada's First Nations, that's mostly their term that they use there. So yeah, Indigenous is fine as well.
Okay, cool.
Thank you very much for all that.
It was super interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So I just got one more question. If we're dealing with something like that, where we're writing a character that's not of our own ethnicity or something like that, do you have like some general advice on how to do that in an accurate and respectful way, or what should people do if they're wanting to portray a character?
Yeah. So the real popular advice, or what we think is the best advice, is to have a sensitivity reader. And I know some people have written some articles on this that I think are helpful. I'm not a sensitivity reader, and I actually generally encourage authors away from that, and if you've used a sensitivity reader, that's great. And, you can definitely take their input. But one thing with sensitivity readers, a couple of things. One is you are getting one person's perspective and sensitivity on an entire culture and history and people that, they're responsible for giving a thumbs up or thumbs down on your book. Like, I know some authors, they've scrapped their entire books because of one person's opinion. And typically sensitivity readers are by nature very sensitive. And we as writers, we can tackle sensitive and hard topics. I think we should. And so we need to be careful with just relying on one person, and especially a sensitivity reader. You can definitely take their input and incorporate that, work through it and all. But I really encourage you to get to know that community or that people group that you're writing about. And this also goes for like disability, like anything you haven't experienced, really get in there and learn from the people themselves themselves and what their experiences are, and make friends within that community. And hopefully they'll give your book a read, or at least portions of it that you may be concerned about. That way you can make sure that you're being accurate, you're being respectful. Ultimately, as authors, we have to make that decision when it comes down to, do I leave this in? Do I take it out? Do I change it? And you have to just take all of your data that you've collected and make that decision the best that you can.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's
That's
good
an awesome
advice.
answer.
Thank you. Alrighty. Do you have any last words for our audience before we finish the
More
interview?
words. She's just talked
No,
herself
I know.
hoarse.
her words are go to
Yeah.
whatever
You
website.
know, I was going to say Dictation. I'm used to talking, right? So yes, go to fictioncourses.com/dictation. I've got some free resources there, including a quick start guide with some punctuation tips and all. So go
Oh,
download that,
fabulous.
and
That's
then
amazing.
fictioncourses.com/stereotypes or /American Indians if you want to go directly to the course. But you can go to fictioncourses.com/stereotypes. And I've gotten wonderful feedback. It's just a short PDF on 5 common stereotypes that authors have when writing Native American characters. So you can read that. I've got short solutions for you to get you started in that journey. But yeah, you can find it all over on fictioncourses.com, and my podcast, Confident Fiction Author, and my Substack, it's fictioncourses.substack.com, I think.
Awesome.
Wonderful. I'll make sure all
Thank
those
you.
links are in the show notes if you're
Yeah.
listening, and also on our YouTube
Yeah.
comments as well.
Brilliant.
So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Sarah. And we can be found at spargirlspodcast.com. We don't have a Substack. We barely have an Instagram. So, but we do. We do have a podcast, and we do have a Patreon at patreon.com/spargirlspodcast if you would like to
Brilliant.
join us within our community.
Awesome. Thank you, Shah. And thank you, Sarah, for joining us on the podcast today. We've really enjoyed it. I know everyone, I can see it from their
Great, yeah.
faces.
It has been amazing. Thank you,
Yeah.
Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
I'll
And-
just say, Yako Ki, thank you in Choctaw. And we don't have a word for goodbye in Choctaw. We say Chapisa Lachiki. I'll see you again soon.
That's
Ah,
awesome.
brilliant.
And we
Fabulous.
will thank you to all of our listeners, and we will see you all again soon next week. But for now, we are going to leave you. See you all.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.